We're running a double-blind experiment tonight. Neither you nor I are going to know if the jokes are going to be funny. Where are the scientists at? Help me out. Where are the scientists at? Yeah. My name is Paul Mason. That's a pretty common name. In fact, I used to live on a street where there were two Paul Masons. And I found that out when the local video store sent me over late fines for the other Paul Masons' overdue loans. Which is completely ridiculous because I'd already been to the premiere screening of My Little Pony at Cinemax. In fact, the name Paul Mason is so common that my local bookstore have been giving my loyalty points to a whole different Paul Mason. Now I realise I look like a Paul Mason that could be living in Bondi, but I actually live in one of the five lowest socioeconomic suburbs of New South Wales. I actually grew up in Melbourne. And I had two older sisters and a mother who spent 3.5 of her formative years growing up in a prisoner of war camp under the Japanese in Indonesia. So I was made acutely aware of the privileges afforded to me growing up in Australia. So, not looking to profit from my white male privilege, I wanted to make a difference in the world. I wanted to make the world a better place. So I decided to become a scientist. When that didn't work out, I decided to become an anthropologist. When that didn't work out, I decided to come here tonight. Now, a common thing happens when anthropologists tell people that we study anthropology. People sometimes think that we study ants and beetles and other insects. And because I'm the last of 3 children and have a desperate need for attention, I'll just roll with it. I will happily regale audiences with fun and interesting facts about invertebrates. In fact, I've gone so far as to invent my own board game about dung beetles called Hexcrement. Copies are available for purchase after the show. Now, anthropologists study humans and our close relatives, and I'm here tonight to tell you about your inner Neanderthal. Shut up, please. They're ducking over there if anyone can't see it. I'm here tonight to tell you about your inner Neanderthal. That's right. Inside all of us, or most of us in this room, there is an inner caveman lurking inside us all. And it's really interesting to learn more about our inner Neanderthal because it tells us about the kinds of diseases that we're protected from, the autoimmune conditions that we are susceptible to, and why some people don't feel embarrassed wearing Crocs in public. So what can I tell you about Neanderthals? Scientists for a long time have not been able to figure out whether scientists were a completely different species or whether they were part of the human species. In fact, if they were sitting next to you on the bus, you probably wouldn't give them a second glance, especially not where I live on the Central Coast. They were a bit shorter than us, they had a smaller forehead, a more pronounced brow ridge, they had high squeaky voices, and something I find really hilarious, they had red hair, and somewhere in our ancestry, someone thought it was a good idea to bring a bit of ginger into the family tree. So, there's some remnants of our Neanderthal ancestry on our skeletal structure, in fact. So their skull size was comparable, if not bigger than our own. And if you look at the back there, and in fact you can feel it on the back of your own skull. Do it with me now. You can feel it on the back of your skull. Yeah, feel there. That's called the occipital bump. The occipital bun. It's the bump there at the back. In phrenology, they call that the inion of knowledge. Mine's really huge. So, how do we make sense of that Neanderthal ancestry? How can we piece together the data that we've got? Well, I'll need to tell you a little bit about hybridization in other animals. So let's start female donkey. You would end up with a zedonk. Oh. It kind of looks like a zebra tried to put on a donkey tried to put on a zebra onesie, but settled for zebra socks instead. Another example, if a male camel fell in love with a female llama, then their confused love child would be called a karma. It's as if nature said, well, here's your payback, a camel that forgot how to be useful, and a llama that's too tall to spit properly. Last example, if you take a male polar bear and crossed it with a female grizzly bear, you would end up with something equal parts fluffy and ferocious. Let's just say in man versus bear, everyone's choosing the Pizzly. Guys, just imagine coming back from a walk in the forest and telling your friends, missing an arm, and telling your friends, I got attacked by a Pizzly. All right, so now that I've told you about hybridization, what's the available evidence about Neanderthals and humans in our DNA? So let's start with our nuclear DNA. Now, I'm not talking about Bruce Banner and the Hulk. I'm talking about the DNA that you inherit from both your parents. So you might inherit your dad's sense of humour, and you might also inherit your mum's ability to roll her eyes at you. Turns out that we've got, any one of us in this room has anywhere up to 4% Neanderthal DNA in our genome. Whoops. Which is a massive contribution. That's the equivalent of a great-great-great-grandparent's contribution to your DNA. So Neanderthals are kind of like our cousins, only the ones you probably wouldn't want to invite to your family reunion. Next piece of evidence comes from our chromosomes. So if we look at the Y chromosome, which is inherited exclusively from the father, we cannot find any Y chromosomes from Neanderthals in the human genome. It's like Neanderthals tried to crash the human party, but Neanderthal boys didn't make it past the bouncer. Third piece of evidence comes in our mitochondrial, it comes from our mitochondria. Mitochondria is the powerhouse inside every cell inside your body. And mitochondria has DNA, which is exclusively inherited from your mum. Because if it came from your dad, he wouldn't shut up about it. Mitochondrial DNA is exclusively human. We haven't found any mitochondrial DNA from Neanderthals in the human species. So if you're feeling a bit low on energy, don't blame your inner Neanderthal, call your mum. Now, how do we make sense of those three data points that are a bit conflicting? So nuclear DNA from both our parents, and some of which is Neanderthal, no Y chromosomes from our Neanderthal dads, no mitochondrial DNA from our Neanderthal mums. Well, in order to answer that question, I need to tell you a little bit more about hybrids. Oops, not that hybrid. These hybrids. Interestingly, all of these hybrids, sorry, Pizzly, are exclusively female, or predominantly female. Male hybrid offspring are either absent, rare, or sterile. It's a little bit like that, the Wi-Fi, your dodgy Airbnb, patchy, on the blink, and probably wasn't working in the first place. So, how do we apply that logic to our understanding of Neanderthal-human hybridization? Well, we could hypothesize then that Neanderthal men were able to interbreed with human women, but the reverse didn't work out very well. So we can't really think of ourselves as humans, as a purebred single species. We really should be thinking about ourselves as Newmans. Now, this is entirely hypothetical and could be proven wrong tomorrow. And I chose to tell you about a hypothesis because when scientists are given a microphone and the limelight, we're often seduced, a little bit like Newman's great-great-great-grandma, to regale audiences with facts about science. But science isn't just about generating facts. Science is about testing hypotheses. It's about taking an idea and seeing if it's falsifiable. Selling the public on the idea that science is a repository of bulletproof knowledge risks undermining public trust. It's a little bit like thinking you can make a short, quick trip to IKEA, only to find out it's going to be a 6-hour grueling test of your will and a descent into hell that could end in divorce. In public culture, we often celebrate scientists as walking Wikipedias, as intellectual giants. But let me clue you into a little trade secret. Scientists are not actually smarter than the rest of the population. Scientists are just more comfortable with feeling stupid. In fact, we don't call it being clueless. We call it productive stupidity. Because real breakthroughs don't come from knowing all the answers, they come from embracing how little we know. In science, we get to take ideas that appear on the surface like inevitable and unavoidable facts. Things like patriarchy, standardized education, capitalism. And we get to treat them as experimental ideas. So thank you very much for listening to my talk about my hypothesis about Neanderthal human hybridization. I'll be back next week to talk about ants. And if none of this made sense, just remember, it's all hypothetical. And on that note, I'll leave you to test your own hypotheses. Thank you very much.